Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 91 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're speaking with Rob Paulsen, one of animation's most talented voice artists. Don't believe me? Just ask Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, or Raphael or Donatello from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yep, that's Rob and Rob and Rob. This week's show is sponsored by the cast of First Man. We won't rest until we've insulted at least half the country. Maybe I'm showing my age, but I've kind of had it with all these Easter eggs and homages we're seeing in films every other weekend. You know the drill. You've got these little secret moments, these visual clues, these nuggets that tie back to previous films in the franchise or the original derivation, or just somehow connecting the new with the old. Sometimes you have to look really hard to find them. Other ones just jump right out at you. And guess what? Can you stop it, please? It's enough. I'm exhausted by this. They're rarely clever. They don't move the story along at all. In fact, they're just distractions at this point. And so are those subtle homages all over films today. Take the new Halloween movie, which just came out this weekend. We see the opening credits, and they look just like the original. And we see other sort of shout-outs and call-outs to the original film. Okay, great, we get it. We make those connections. Oh, we're so smart, and we're so esteemed and so full of pop culture lore that we can make those connections without anyone telling us. Do I get a prize for that? Now, in a perfect world, none of this would bother me at all. But here's the issue. Movies like Halloween, they're not that good. They've got plot holes and silly situations and dumb twist after dumb twist. It makes me wonder, hey guys and gals, how about you cut back on the Easter eggs and put some real thought into the story and the plot and the dialogue and the characters? That needs your attention. Not the cool Easter eggs that you're going to tweet about the next day. You know, I almost never complain about Easter eggs when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Those movies are good. They're fun. They're exciting. They hold together. They keep your interest. They could jam the screen with as many Easter eggs as humanly possible. I don't care. Go for it. Bring it on. These movies are fun, and they're enjoyable. And any kind of Easter eggs, they're there, great, but they're well put together movies. They're well conceived, and they do exactly what they are intended to do. Make us be entertained for 2+ hours. So how about it, Hollywood? You start cleaning up those scripts and we'll endure whatever homages or Easter eggs you have in mind. Deal?
Hi, Michelle Malkin here. The Gosnell movie opens on October 12th. Dean Cain and the entire cast do a superb job bringing this true story to the big screen.
Healthy woman goes into a clinic, comes out dead, and there's no police report?
You might be worried that this movie is too scary. It's not. As a mother of 2, I promise you, you can bring your teenage children to see it. Bring friends and family, too. We have a unique opportunity to change hearts and minds about abortion. Don't miss out.
Kermit Gosnell is perhaps the most prolific serial killer in American history.
Gosnell, rated PG-13.
Here's the HiT tweet of the week. West Wing alum Bradley Whitford takes center stage this week, reading from the same cue cards as his pals from Hollywood. They're talking about these missing Saudi journalists, a really terrible story if all the news reports are true about his fate. Of course, this, like almost everything else, has been weaponized against President Trump by the media and the left, but I repeat myself. Here's Bradley's hot take on the matter. When the president says the press is the enemy of the people, journalists die. Sorry, Bradley. Reporters are doing untold damage to their industry by their lies and deceits and all the things they're doing that make fake news a very real thing. Trump is merely calling them out.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
My hit tip of the week is Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. It is the quintessential hit or miss comedy. Some segments are just absolutely dull, other ones are a riot. But the hits, man, they're out of the park. Of course, you know the Monty Python troupe, but here they're really pushing the boundaries of good taste well beyond what they usually do, with some very funny results. Even the songs in the film are a hoot. My favorite scene? That's easy. Mr. Creosote, hands down. I'll say no more about that sequence if you haven't seen it. It is unforgettable, and not for the squeamish. For years and years, I had the movie on VHS. Whenever I have people come over, friends, relatives, anyone in the house, I would kind of give them a quick little elbow, a gentle elbow, and say, "Hey, have you seen The Meaning of Life?" And we'd watch that scene. It's just indescribable. Now, the movie marks their final feature film together. They've done other projects, some live shows, but this was their last full-length feature. And they went out with a bang and a dangling clock. Watch that scene I'm talking about and you'll know what I mean. Monty Python's The Meaning of Life is available right now for streaming on Netflix.
Don't touch that dial. You're listening to my daddy's podcast.
Now, let's get to this week's HitCast interview. Rob Paulsen faced a career crossroads years ago. He could continue as a working actor, but, the gigs might be hard to come by at times. Or he can lean on his very nimble voice to provide the characters for a variety of animated projects. The cartoons won out, and so did we. Rob provides the vocal work for Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, and so much more. He's currently touring with Animaniacs in Concert, a live show where he gets to show what he really can do, not just with his voice, but also his performance and his physical gestures. Again, he's an actor. He's been holding it in all these years, so now you can see him in the flesh. But best of all, he loves what he does, absolutely loves what he does, and he gives back to others in a way that I think is absolutely wonderful. It was my favorite part of our conversation. Here's my chat with vocal legend Rob Paulsen. Rob, I read an article where you said that you now get to do for a living what you would get in trouble with back in the day. And I was kind of curious, when you have a voice like yours and skills like you have, how early did that pop up? Were you a teenager? Was it even younger? When did this sort of sense that, hey, I've got a real genuine talent, when did it manifest itself?
Hello?
You can hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, but how weird. Anyway.
Did you hear the question? I can repeat it if you need to.
I did not. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We'll just start anew. So,
Okay.
I was just saying, you said in interviews in the past that the work you do now is what you get in trouble with when you were younger, sort of doing voices and improvising and having fun. When did you realize you had a vocal gift, that you had a dexterity, a talent? Was that very early in life? Did it come later? When did it kind of manifest itself?
I don't know that I ever had this epiphanal moment in which I thought, oh my goodness, I'm good at this. All I knew is that it sounds pretty deep, but it's true. It made my soul happy. I just got this Jones to perform, like a lot of people who end up doing what I do, whether it's dancing, singing, whatever, professional sports, broadcasting. You just find it makes you feel good on almost a chemical level. The people who inspired me, kind of the usual suspects, Peter Sellers, the Goons, the Pythons, Jonathan Winters, Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, Dick Van Dyke, all of them were, funny people, but most of them were able to manipulate their voices. Red Skelton, and I was kind of inspired by that. And I found that it not only it was fun to do, but it made me happy watching them. I just really enjoy laughing, and I don't know if I enjoy laughing more than the average person, but it's just it's kind of like a daily ritual. And it doesn't take long when you're young, whatever it is, whether you find out that you're a beautiful woman or a handsome guy, or you're 6'8" and you can dunk a basketball, whatever it is, once, like they say, the first one's free, baby. But after that, you're hooked. And I think that it was probably, as I recall, it was quite long ago, but it was probably the opportunity that I had to sing with, rock and roll bands and friends of mine, and kind of thought, wow, this is pretty cool. People pay attention. It's great fun. I enjoy being funny, and then they laugh when I'm funny. And then when I sing songs that they recognize in funny voices, it's kind of fun for everybody. And never in a million years did I think I'd make a dime at it, which I think, Christian, is kind of the sort of blessing in disguise, which means that when I came here to LA to ply my trade, it was not necessarily to do voice work, it was to work. Singing, acting, music, whatever it was. I was a singer first, but the money aspect of it sort of organically came along. I still have the same joy and excitement to do what I do for the sake of doing it. And so to that extent, I think you're speaking with a lottery winner, because I go to work every day, and I do. I get paid to do it. It used to get me in a little bit of trouble in high school, but I do it with world-class talent who happen to be personal friends that come to my house all the time. And then I talk to nice people like you about something that don't tell anybody, but I would do it for free. Uh-huh. It's incredible. And I get it, man. I get how lucky I am.
Yeah, your secret's safe with me. I think when people think about voice acting, they think, go into a studio, read a few lines. I know it's much more involved than that. There's much more creativity behind that. But when you're approaching maybe a new character, what goes through your mind? Is it kind of creating a background, a biography? Give us maybe sort of a snapshot of that creative process.
Generally, if I'm working on a show that has been sold, something like Ninja Turtles or Doc McStuffins or whatever, Fairly Odd Parents, you've got a show that has already been sold by the producers to whichever company, Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers, Disney, and the creators have already put together what they call a show Bible, which is exactly what the name implies. It is the sort of nuts and bolts and the go-to creative background of this particular show. So every character has their own backstory, the interrelationships with other characters, and that is provided to the actors. But that's generally after we get the job. In terms of getting an audition or whatever, we get sort of rudimentary background information and a couple of ideas of what the character looks like, and then off we go and we do our audition. If we get the job, then it becomes much more specific, and we get all the information about how everybody or every critter relates to every other critter. And it's just this wonderful amalgam of creative talent on both sides of the glass. And it really is, especially with respect to my part of the gig, it's just utterly joyful, unless the story is, sad and depressing. But other than that, it's a purely joyful experience, because I'm working with all these wonderful people I alluded to earlier for a really lovely check with people who are at the top of their game. And so the whole process is really creative, but I don't think of it as it is certainly much more involved than just doing a funny voice and you go home. It is much deeper than that, but it's never work, because it's just fun. And if it turns out to be work, certainly there are sessions that are more difficult than others, more onerous on your voice, whatever. But you can get physically tired, but at the end of the day, literally, not the phrase du jour, but literally at the end of a work day, I'm exhausted from laughing and being creative. And so I don't think that's a bad thing to be.
Yeah. Is there anything you do special for your voice, either resting it or maybe drinking certain liquids, or anything you can do to kind of make sure the instrument is as sharp as possible?
Vodka works great, man. It just doesn't work in the middle of the day, but no, I don't have any particular elixir. I'm careful with my throat and my voice. I drink a lot of water. If my voice gets a little bit worn out, tea, honey, lemon, the typical stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't, and I certainly don't abuse my voice. I actually am not quite a teetotaler, but almost. So I'm not really. I think that you learn pretty after a while that the obvious issue, smoking, is an obvious no-no. Although I have to say, I do know two people in Hollywood who smoke because they like the way it makes their voice sound. And I, while I certainly respect one's creative process, that to me is a little bit over the top, but hey, they got to do what they got to do. I don't do that because I need my voice for normal stuff like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But I just rested, and I'm pretty aware now that if I get to a place where a character is particularly onerous, I'll tell the producer, look, you probably got this for another half an hour. And they know me well enough to know that I'm not being a prima donna. I just know that I can't give them what they need at this level for much longer than about another half hour because my voice will take a beating and I need to rest it for a day or two. But so it really is just more about being sort of just relatively vigilant, and that okay, that's enough. It's like pulling over when you're driving too long. Your brain says it's time for you to stop, and shame on you if you don't. And so I'm pretty good at knowing my limits.
When you think about a lot of the work you do, I guess you could categorize it as children's programming, although I think often you probably have more adult fans than kids at this point. But I was kind of curious.
Boy, it's the truth, man. Yeah.
What's changed about the kind of animation that you do? I don't even mean sort of the visuals, how that sort of evolves over time.
Yeah.
But is today's programming smarter, different? Is it snarkier? Is it sort of more, meta references to past? What's kind of evolved? I mean, you've been in the industry for a while now. What have you seen change with the kinds of programming that you take care of?
The answer to your question kind of is yes. It's become all of that. However, like the term snarky, I certainly have been, I guess guilty is the right word. I've been guilty of doing characters that are kind of snarky, Yakko and Raphael and all that. But so is Bugs. Bugs was kind of snarky. And a couple of other characters that I grew up watching were, kind of a smart-assy type of character. And it works often in the context of animation, especially when you're doing animation that appeals to children and adults, a la Looney Tunes and Animaniacs. Those are both two good examples of shows which are utterly relevant in the case of the former 50, 60 years later, and watchable, and Animaniacs 25 years later. Certainly now with so much stuff to reference, as you said, meta references, pop culture issues, the internet, the instantaneous nature in which we communicate with each other. There's so much stuff that comes into play with respect to and pop culture in general, whether it's live action television, movies. Every week there's a sort of secondary or tertiary action hero, Ant-Man and Wasp. I think I've vaguely heard of them, but now they're probably on their second or third feature. And so it's other ways to exploit characters, and I mean that in the positive way. It's still a for-profit enterprise, to be sure. But there's also so much more need for product now, Christian. When I was a kid, it was ABC, CBS, and NBC Saturday morning, and the occasional local TV station that would have the syndicated show or an after-school special or whatever, and then the occasional primetime thing. But man, oh man, has that changed. Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, Apple. I think probably every major company will have their own online circumstance soon. And the content that's being made for handheld devices and devices we can't even fathom yet, they're looking for, there's so much content. So everything that is able to be mined to be sold to the public is mineable. And it's just kind of like I'm really, really, really in a wonderful spot. I'm old enough to have a credibility with a pretty large fan base. And make no mistake, I get it. The characters are famous. I'm good at my job, but man, I don't draw them and I don't write them. I'm just the actor and the singer. But I have a credibility with a very large fan base because I've been able to do this, and nobody cares what I look like, and they still don't. The other side of the coin is that I'm young enough to keep working for the next 25 years. Mel Blanc worked until he was in his early 80s. June Foray worked until she was 90. And although I'm certainly no Spring Poulet, I'm not quite that age. And I'm working more now than I ever have. And still, it's about what I can bring to the party and the kindness of people who hire me. It's not about how I look, which I find very, very refreshing in terms of a creative aspect.
I can imagine. You know, the Animaniacs in Concert show that you're a part of lets people see you. You sing, you perform, you tell stories. I was kind of curious, you've been behind the scenes in a way as much of your career. Was that refreshing to kind of be out in front, or was it a little scary to kind of all of a sudden say, hey, they can see me doing these voices? What was that like when you first started doing those concert shows?
Well, firstly, it was a wonderful gift that we got. Randy Rogel, who wrote the songs we perform, and most of which everyone knows from Animaniacs, like the United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama. Randy wrote that, and God knows 20 other ones we do in the show. But it was really through the kindness of Warner Brothers licensing. Randy and I went to them hat in hand several years ago because we didn't want to be in a position where we had to ask for forgiveness. We wanted to start doing the show. We thought, you know what, as much as it may end up costing us, we should try to go to them first and say, here's what we ought to do. We're not going to denigrate the show. We were the show, big part of it, blah, blah, blah. And Warner Brothers, God bless them, gave us a incredibly gracious, wonderful licensing deal, which allows us to take the music and video, animated clips of the show around the country. And I started my career as a live performer. So for me, it was nothing but pure excitement to get on stage and do it. And what really is cool, Christian, is it's like when I was a kid, and I'd be watching the Tonight Show, and Mel Blanc would show up and just go, just riff. And he'd have the audience in the palm of his hand, and the biggest part of the audience he had in his hand was Johnny. Johnny would just, because there's something magical about seeing, this average-looking fellow walking out and say, what's up, Doc, and then go off into everything else, and it hits you in it hits you in nostalgia. It hits you in the how does he do that? It hits you in the I can't believe it's only one guy that, all that stuff. And I'm not comparing myself to Mel. That is up to people, when I'm toast to say, yeah, that guy was good. He was no Mel Blanc, but he was in the top 50. Who knows? But that's not my job. My job is to do what I do. The characters in Animaniacs in particular have become so well known by so many people because that show appeals to people on different levels, and that was utterly by design. So as I alluded to a bit earlier, I've got this great credibility just with Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain because those shows had really no audience when they came out 25 years ago. But as a result of being so well done, thank you, Mr. Spielberg, and his crew, Tom Ruger and the rest of them, they knew what they were doing. And their genius is borne out because the audience we get now, whether it's a couple hundred at Joe's Pub in New York or Feinstein's at the Nico, or we're coming to your neck of the woods in Colorado. We did our show at the Colorado Symphony in Denver a few years ago with 80 pieces, and it was absolutely wonderful down there at the you guys have a lovely concert facility downtown by the
I'm drawing
place where you guys have the Denver Comic.
But I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, the Betcher Center. The Betcher Center, yeah. And anyway, it was wonderful. And we're coming back to do it in Colorado, which we can find. We'll talk about that later on our website. But my point is that, no, it was utterly exciting. And the same thing happens to the audience, the mean age of which, interestingly, is about 35 years old. Whether it's coming to see us at a 200-seat club with Randy Mina piano, or 80 pieces like the Colorado Symphony and 3,000 folks in the audience. The average age of the audience is about 35 because there are all these people who grew up watching it and now they want to bring their kids, and they both dig it. And it is the most wonderful experience to see how people respond when I start saying, hello, nurse, or, hey, God, right? Look at all the people. They just freak. Yeah. And they're doing what you're doing now. They just smile.
They smile. I smile.
And it is Yes, it's just a miraculous thing. And my goodness, how lucky am I? And I am not ashamed to tell you that I can't get enough of it. And it's happening more and more where I'll be in a social circumstance. It happened to her at Starbucks. There was a sweet little girl she said, "Excuse me, are you Rob Paulsen?" I said, "I am. Are you with the IRS?" And she said, "No, I'm just a fan." I said, "Well, thank you, honey." But what she wanted was not, she was very sweet, but what she wanted was hello, nurse. And so as soon as I did it, she just started to cry.
Oh,
how great is that?
Yeah.
It's just, I will never not double negative, never not find that deeply flattering and humbling, and to the extent it brings someone joy out of the clear blue. Oh my goodness, I'm living a dream, pal.
Connecting to that, I understand you've worked with kids and sick children for a while, and sort of helping cheer up in exactly that way. And then I guess fairly recently you had a battle with throat cancer. I was kind of curious, getting to know those kids and experiencing all the things and cheering them up. Was any of that helpful to you when you were on your particular fight? Because it seems like an odd way to kind of approach a more personal battle, in a sense.
How about that? Yes. Again, you are answering your questions. Yes, that did all of that work. Trust me, when I was diagnosed 2 years ago, it got my attention pretty quick. It was like, there's a great adage or a great axiom that we make plans and God laughs. Mm-hmm. And you kind of live your life. And then one day you wake up and you go, well, I've got this weird lump in my neck. I don't hurt. I'm working. I feel fine. I'm not losing weight. I grew up playing hockey in Michigan, and I'm a typical guy. Unless you have something hanging off by a thread or you can't feel your legs, you just go on and say, I'll take care of it unless it hurts. So finally I went for my regular physical. The doctor said, okay, here's the deal. You have stage 3 throat cancer. That lump on your neck is the area to which the cancer is spread. And I did kind of chuckle. I thought, well, there you go. How's that for the universe giving you a bit of a left-hand, curveball? But I have to tell you that, and thank you for bringing that up, because, oh my goodness, Christian, I have been so incredibly blessed to have been involved with children and their families during the most difficult, diabolical circumstances in their lives. And these people let me in, and not just me, we all do it, to find some way to bring a little bit of joy to their sweet baby, and often, by extension themselves. I'm a parent. If my child, God forbid, were in that circumstance and there was somebody who was able to bring a little bit of joy while my kid was hooked up to a bunch of machines, oh, Jesus, I would do whatever it took to make that happen. And so these parents have allowed me in their lives, whether it was Ninja Turtles or Animaniacs or Pinky and the Brain or Jimmy Neutron or Biker Mice from Mars or The Tick or The Mask or any of these characters that these kids have happened to want to talk to. Of course, I call them up. I go visit them. And again, not just me. And often the kids don't make it. So the parents keep in touch with me and they say, I just want to let you know, it's been 5 years since Jordy passed away. And I got to tell you, Rob, I will never forget, when Raphael called. And that's an important distinction. It really is an important distinction. It's the magic of the characters, not Rob. And it's not false modesty. I'm good at my job. But it's the magic of what those characters do. And it is a profoundly powerful thing, Christian.
I can imagine.
And so I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand, and I've witnessed it in my own life countless times. So cut to me at 59 years old. Look, even if the doctors had said, hey, dude, you better go home and get your stuff, pardon me, in order because you're fixing to punch your ticket. I have zero about which to be sorry. I've had a remarkable life, a great family, a wonderfully healthy son. He's married. I got great insurance. My wife will be fine. I've had wonderful friends. I have nothing to feel sorry about. But they didn't say that. They said it's going to be really miserable for about 6 months for obvious reasons, because we're going to have to zap your throat and chemo you up and all that. And you're going to die someday, but not from this. However, there are going to be periods of time when you're going to think you're dying because it's miserable. And it was. But it was not as miserable as spending a year in chemo or watching your child go through it, and then they still die. And I can't even imagine what that's like. How on earth do parents get up the next day and put their pants on and say, okay, well, funeral's done. I got to go to work. Are you kidding me? And it happens every day. And I never had to go through that. It was my turn in the cage, and it turns out that every one of these children and their parents, unbeknownst to me, were preparing me for exactly that, for my turn to take a punch. And thank you for bringing it up, because now, to the extent that my story can be helpful or inspirational or whatever to anyone else, I have a little sort of bullier pulpit than the average person from which to tell my story. And you never know when somebody is going through their own throat cancer or really horrible circumstance, and they may happen to be a fan of Pinky or Yakko or a couple of Ninja Turtles, and say, golly, did you know that the guy who was the voice of Raphael had throat cancer? And now he's back on the road singing all these Animaniacs songs, and you can't tell the difference. You know what? I think I got this.
Yeah.
So I really want to be helpful to any extent I can, and I really appreciate folks like you giving me a chance to talk about it.
Well, excellent. I'm glad to have a clean bill of health, and also you've got a full plate, because the Animaniacs are coming back, and now this may be the case where I tell you, but I have to kill you. But is there anything you can share about the reboot? What's can you kind of whet our already wet appetite in this?
Well, here's the deal. I can guarantee that the reboot is happening. 2020 on Hulu.
Okay.
It is again with Mr. Spielberg, and let's just take a moment, shall we, to analyze this. We're in the entertainment business, and you have a wonderful podcast and a lot of people who listen to it. Let's take a moment to understand. This is Steven Spielberg. Okay, he is the king of Hollywood. And by the way, one of the nicest, most down-to-earth, unpretentious humans you would ever want to meet. I've had the great good fortune of working with Mr. Spielberg on a number of projects. We don't bowl together, but he is a wonderful boss.
Good to hear.
But we're talking about a cartoon show. Here's Mr. Spielberg, who's probably, I don't know, in his early 70s now. He's done everything he needs to do to cement his place in the history of the world forever, okay? And he says, I see what's happening with Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain, and I sure thought that was a great show. Let's do it again. Now, that alone is a big deal. And then Hulu said, you're right, Mr. Spielberg, let's do it again. So they're doing 26 half hours of Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs for Hulu for 2020. Then the next question is, well, are you and Tress MacNeille, who was Dot, and Jess Harnell, who was Wacko, and Maurice LaMarche, who was the Brain, are you folks all involved? And the answer right now is, let's just make this analogous to were the subject of a Senate subcommittee hearing. I could say, Senator Toto, I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay.
So Warner Brothers will happily make an announcement very soon about whether or not the confirmation or the denial should be taken to heart. But I can tell you that it's a very exciting thing to know that Mr. Spielberg is helming this again. And whether we're involved or not, I can just say to the fan base, don't bet against Mr. Spielberg. He knows what he's doing.
All right. Well, our fingers are officially crossed. And Rob, thank you. Thank you so much for joining the show. We will maybe look forward to hearing more of your performances down the road. Also, visit Animaniacslive.com to find out the Animaniacs in concert appearance at a town near you. And also, you can listen to Rob's Nerdist podcast, Talkin' Tunes. And, of course, we will wait and hope and think and say that the Hulu reboot will have your name attached to it. I am optimistic, as I think you are as well. But, Rob, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad you're back in good health, and we look forward to hearing more of your voice for 20 to 30 or if not 40 years.
Well, bless your heart, Christian. Thank you very much. And all you people who listen to his water tower cast. See, that's where my brain is. Christian's podcast, you all get free tickets to the Water Tower. So anytime you're in Burbank, come on, bang it on the Water Tower. That is, of course, if security lets you make it up the ladder. But if you do, then come on in. But thank you very much, man. It's really a pleasure, and congratulations on your success. Well deserved, by the way. It is a pleasure to share casting of a pod with you, my friend, and thanks for your time and your incredible kindness.
I appreciate it. Be well, and maybe we can talk again down the road.
I hope so, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodandToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodandToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.